One of the most frequently asked questions and discussed topics is whether to decide for a standardized software like a SaaS solution, boxed and ready more or less, and then customize it, adapt it to the individual needs of the business, as compared to like building something from scratch, an individual software, and which is also like a valid option, and I'm trying to explain it through an analogy. So think of it like in the car business. So you have like the standardized cars, the Volkswagen, let's say the Golf, okay? It has been produced for the masses. Okay, you can customize it, you can upgrade it, you can buy the GTE, you can build another engine, you can tune it up as much as you like, but this car originally was standard and for the masses, built for the masses. And on the other side, you have individual cars like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and things like that. Highly tuned, individual tuned cars. There are not many out there, and each of them have a specific purpose. Okay, just for the sake of the analogy. And now you may argue, okay, I can obviously take now the Volkswagen, the Golf, yeah, and I tune it up to 600 horsepower, even up to 1,000 horsepower. I can make it even faster than the Ferrari, so to speak. That's possible, but there's a big but. The framework, the foundation of the Volkswagen will never change. It's still the same. You can entirely exchange the engine. You can entirely also, in theory, exchange the outer frame, but then it's not the same car anymore. But the framework is that of a Volkswagen that has more or less around between 100 and 200 horsepower, more or less. And although you can, and this is the same with the analogy to the software. So basically a standardized software has a specific purpose, but it has always its limits. And you can tune it up, you can customize it up to the sky. But the risk is this: with the Volkswagen, and I know from own experience because I grew up when I was young with a couple of friends of mine I knew since grammar school, and they went into the tuning and motorcycles and Ford Escort clubs and Golf Volkswagen clubs and everything. And you can tune it up to the sky, but you take the risk that you blow up the engine. Sooner or later the engine will get cracks. Yeah. When I met these friends later at a later reunion several years later, I had learned that one guy died in an accident, one guy ended up in a wheelchair, and another one I think died just 3 days after he got his motorcycle license. It was a slippery road, and he slipped and he broke his neck, instantly was dead. It was actually the brother of one of my best friends in the 10th grade. So this is an analogy now to the software, and also like my first job was building airbags and seatbelts in '92 for BMW and Audi and basically all the German car builders, so this is where I'm coming from the very beginning. So the analogy to the software industry is basically this: if you think of something that, if you need a software, a solution, so basically always try to, as much as you can, to reverse engineer from the problem. So you have a problem and you need it to solve. This is why you look around for a piece of software or some IT solution. Nobody's doing this just for fun. So you take the problem first, you try to identify the problem as much and as good as you can. I know sometimes it's very hard to do, to basically forecast the future. It's impossible sometimes, but do the homework as much as you can, the preparation, because the preparation is the prerequisite for a good foundation, and the good foundation is a prerequisite for a reliable, stable, up and running system and profitable system, so your business can scale up in the long run. Okay, so think about what you're trying to achieve in a couple of years' time, and then make up your mind. Usually for the bigger companies, it's very valuable to have the thinking of doing their own piece of software from scratch. Why? because there is a couple of advantages and disadvantages with each type of solution. And one of the big advantages, the disadvantages with the individual software solutions, obviously, because it can be very pricey and you need to put a lot of effort in it, and you need good people because you build up something from scratch. But the second thing is the advantage is that a real competitive advantage towards all your competitors in a certain market, in any given market, you only achieve by having basically your own piece of software that you individually, build. And if it's your own piece of software, you can later on then always have the option to resell it to your distributors, to make your distributors, your delivery partners, whatever, your channel partners and so forth, to make them to your SaaS client. So to turn your individual solution into a SaaS that you own, and then you're the guy who is licensing it. So then you earn constant fees. And on top of it, it's your own software that you individually build, and you have the competitive advantage that there's nothing just 100% alike out in the market as compared to buying something off the shelf. But this is usually only interesting for people with, and this is the most, obviously the downside, with budget. You need to invest, you need to have a longer breath, obviously. You cannot just log into some SaaS solution, register there and then, get going within a couple of days. You do some course, some education on it. And then hopefully, if it's not too complicated to learn, then you're up and running in a couple of weeks or something. So for a small SaaS business, for mid-sized business, this may take a little longer. And even if you're a bigger business and you have a custom software such as SAP or Microsoft or Dynamics or whatever it is, or Salesforce, even there sometimes it takes ages because there's two worlds coming together, like a really complex environment with lots of different requirements, different departments and so forth. And customized software, an off-the-shelf software, which is impossible to have all the configurations in the way that your individual company is needed. So you have to do the customizing, and sometimes a lot of customizing anyway, and programming and all this stuff. So the higher you go up the ladder with the size of the company in general, the more complex this whole thing goes. But if you're a smaller size business, it's usually, well, it used to be the better option, always go for some SaaS. But always keep in mind where you want to go, where you want to be in a couple of years. And also now with AI and so-called vibe coding, these two worlds sometimes keep merging to some extent, which is changing this whole game from the very beginning. But the thinking to have your goal in mind and defined first, and then reverse engineer, and then think thoroughly about the prerequisites in order to build your foundation on which is then build up your company. This sort of like thought process and this way of thinking has not changed. It's just as important as it has to be, as it used to be. Okay, so my word towards standardized software versus individual software. It is the same question that has been really in the discussion for many, many decades, basically. But things are constantly changing. Even though you have been thinking about this already in the past, you may need to rethink it due to the fact that, with AI, things are also changing and everything else. So basically, this is my video to this topic. If you like the video, if you want any other videos towards this kind of topic, then just let me know in the comments and talk to you soon later. Bye.